What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football, and today we are breaking down NC State ahead of the 2025 season. If you like this content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like. You'd be shocked how much doing even that will get us in front of new viewers. So thank you if you have helped out. I truly appreciate it. Before we move forward to this season, we'll briefly look at back at last year for NC State and talk about any actionable things moving forward. So let's take a look at their efficiency metrics from last season. It was overall a pretty good year for NC State, all things considered. I say that because you lose your quarterback almost immediately in the season. They were battered on defense, especially in the secondary. There were a lot of injuries that stacked up for this team. But with that said, it was still probably only a decent outcome considering they returned a lot of players to this team and they didn't quite live up to expectations. They finished 6-7. They do reach a bowl game, but you still see Dave Doeren firing both of his coordinators, which suggests, it didn't exactly go according to plan for this team. If you look on offense, they had an excellent offensive line, a top 25 unit in the country. They still had trouble running the ball. Jordan Waters did not live up to expectation. Even the receiving game, they finished 78th there. Casey Concepcion has a down year. Now he's at Texas A&M. What do we do with this? Honestly, I was surprised by how well CJ Bailey played, but now you're changing OCs. It's a lot of change for NC State as we move into another year under Dave Doeren. Defense, no real qualms with considering how hurt they were. They were well above average in almost every category. Just didn't truly reach any elite unit. 45th pass coverage was their best finish among any of the individual units that the defense put on the field. But we mentioned it. It is year 13 for Dave Doeren. The seat is getting a little hotter. I'd be very curious to hear what you guys think about this. Any NC State fans I've talked to seem to think that this is a make or break year for him. He is 81-58 in those 13 years. Finished 6-7 last year, ton of single-digit games, single-digit losses to teams like Wake Forest by 4 points, Syracuse by 7, Georgia Tech by 1, East Carolina by 5, also lost to Duke by 10 points. Some of those losses are better than others, probably the worst ones, East Carolina and Wake Forest. But they had a lot of single-digit victories as well as you go through this schedule. It was a little questionable overall, but I mean, really, your only two bad losses came to playoff teams. You lost to Tennessee and Clemson by blowouts. Otherwise, wins against Northern Illinois, Cal, North Carolina, 10-point win over Louisiana Tech. Those were all single digits. I think those are all questionable. So, you kind of have these losses that are excusable, these losses that were very close to good teams. But then your wins that were close to Northern Illinois, Cal, North Carolina, Louisiana Tech, your only comfortable wins against Western Carolina and Stanford, it just raises questions overall. But now you change coordinators. Robert and I is gone on the offensive side. They hired Kurt Roper. He's an in-house replacement, coach quarterbacks the last 2 years. He's coordinated offenses before, but it's been quite some time. He was the co-OC of South Carolina in 2016 and 2017, previously OC of Florida in 2014. His offenses play fast. They generally move through the air, pass-heavy offenses. The only divergence from last year's Robert and I's 2024 offense played super slow. So you're probably going to see them speed up a little bit. I'm not sure if that was because of injuries or what, but I kind of think so. Defensively, DJ Elliott comes in. Last year, an analyst for Baylor, previously coached linebackers for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2023. He coordinated Temple's defense in 2022. Temple's a very difficult place to win. You're working with a little, and I think he kind of maximized them. But still, there's questions with this hire. He's not some proven commodity coming up. Fortunately, he's coordinated defenses before. But it's a bit of a question mark with Dave Doeren sort of making two conservative hires at coordinator. We'll see what this means for him and his team that generally has played conservative throughout his tenure. But let's look at talent acquisition for this team. Generally speaking, they are one of the better teams in this conference. Generally recruiting around a top 7 or 8 level. They reached number 5 in 2024 with the 28th ranked class. In 2023, they only retained 49% of that class, which is really the only blip on the radar for this team in terms of talent acquisition and retention. They've been very good at acquiring talent, at least compared to the ACC, and then retaining it. No, they'll never quite be Miami, Clemson, even SMU at this point. But they're better than a lot of teams in this conference, and they will hit the transfer portal to situationally bring guys in. They were 18th last year, and they're 57th this year. This is a team that has pretty good talent as far as this conference goes. So what does the roster look like now that they have some of this talent? Let's take a look. Here is our data usage tool. This is available in Discord, but basically we're just trying to project a 2-deep depth chart. Transfers are in yellow. We have the year they are in school, the snaps they've played the last 2 years, what recruit they were in terms of a star ranking, and then an overall value score. That looks first at your recruiting, and then the more snaps you've played, the less it's going to look at that recruiting, the more it's going to look at your on-field play. Which brings us to CJ Bailey, the quarterback for NC State, pressed into action immediately last year. Didn't go well, but it wasn't a poor showing either. And there's a lot of room for optimism here as he enters his sophomore season. Again, 4-star, but he's 6'6", 210 pounds. He completed 65% of his passes, 8 yards per attempt, 17 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 14 big-time throws, and 18 turnover-worthy plays. That's the real problem. If we can bring the turnover-worthy plays down, he showed a lot of upside. He also runs a little bit. 279 yards, took 23 sacks. That was a 20% pressure to sack ratio. So basically, if you take CJ Bailey and you clean up some of the negative plays, the interceptions, fumbles, and some of the sacks, you're looking at a quarterback that had a lot of raw talent, which shouldn't be surprising considering his recruiting ranking. He still finished as the 61st most efficient quarterback in college football, and there should be room for optimism. The only real downside outside of those turnover-worthy plays is now you change OCs. Fortunately, your new OC was the quarterback coach, so there shouldn't be too much of a problem with that transition. Behind him, a couple young 3-stars, Lex Thomas, Will Wilson. It's not very good. It's not proven at all, so you're going to need CJ Bailey to stay healthy. You don't have the depth, but it's NC State. Generally, we're not talking about a lot of depth in the QB room to begin with. But the running back position, they lose a couple players. I think it's more addition by subtraction. Jordan Waters is gone. Kendrick Raphael transferred. So now you have just Hollywood Smothers, the former Oklahoma 4-star. I don't know why they didn't play him more. He averaged 6.4 yards per carry. He caught 19 passes, and he averaged 4.5 yards after contact per attempt. Forced 25 missed tackles. The only real downside to Smothers is he's 5'11", 195 pounds. It's not prototypical size for a lead back, but I mean, that's not small either. We're not talking about a 180-pounder here. He should be able to handle more work than he did last year. They don't have anything behind him, at least proven-wise, so I'm expecting this to be the Smothers show, and I'm really excited to see what we get out of a full season of Smothers. No more Waters slamming into the back of the O-line. Raphael, who was a 4-star, is now at a different program. So we need Smothers. Behind him, we're talking redshirt freshman Jaden Scott. He played 6 snaps. DeAndre Desenor, he's a freshman they recruited this year. Redshirt freshman Isaiah Jones is on the team. Basically no production or snaps behind Smothers. I'm expecting a pretty hefty workload for him, which should be pretty good for this team. At wide receiver, they lose Casey Concepcion to Texas A&M. Dakari Collins is also gone. But they do return 2 of their better receivers, Noah Rogers and Wesley Grimes, both former 4-stars. Rogers comes from Ohio State originally. He is 6'2", 205, and he led the team with 35 catches for 478 yards. That was better than Casey Concepcion, which is kind of a problem. But fortunately, this efficiency was awesome. Played out wide 90% of the time, 2.04 yards per route. He flat out outplayed Concepcion, and I know we were dealing with some injuries on that front, but an Ohio State 4-star that played well in his first action, this is a positive. Grimes was originally with Wake Forest. He was also a 4-star. He finished with 24 catches for 319 yards. That was 4th on the team. He's 6'2", 193 pounds. 88% of the time he was out wide, 1.58 yards per route. This is solid too. These 2 receivers are a great place to start, and then you have some experience with Terrell Anderson and Keenan Jackson. Anderson being 6'2", 204. He's a 4-star sophomore, 14 catches for 158 yards, played out wide 88% of the time. Yards per route was pretty good for him. So that's another 4-star. Then you have a couple of younger 4-stars, Jonathan Paylor and Jareel Boulder. Boulder's an incoming 4-star. Paylor played 5 snaps. He's now in his 2nd season. You've got 5 4-stars on this roster. And then we mentioned Jackson. He was a 3-star sophomore, caught 12 passes, 124 yards as a freshman. He's 6'3", 200 pounds and played out wide. Not the most efficient, but that gives you a 6th option. This is a pretty good receiving core. And even with the depth, Tank Boston, Teddy Hoffman, Ashton Locklear. Locklear played 34 snaps somehow as a former walk-on. I mean, this is a pretty good receiver unit, and I honestly think it might be a little upgraded from last year considering we didn't see Concepcion live up to expectations. At the worst, I think you're talking about a receiving core that's on par with last year. At tight end, former UConn transfer Justin Jolly is back with this team. He was the team's leading receiver, so this should be considered a positive. He's 6'3", 251, 661 yards on 43 catches. 62% of his routes came from the slot, but he had 1.79 yards per route, which was solid. He doesn't block a lot, but he was average when he was asked to do so. He is prototypical size to do it all. Justin Jolly is an awesome player. And when they choose to go 12, that's 2 tight ends in the field, you have a couple of options. Dante Daniels played 207 snaps. He is 272 pounds. As you can imagine, he was basically a blocker. They add Nebraska transfer Ian Flint. He's 6'4", 270 pounds. And they also add Cody Hardy from Elon, who's 6'4", 268 pounds. Basically, all of these are 6th offensive linemen. Think of an extension of your offensive line playing tight end. Huge players that are kind of, I think, just going to play in 12 personnel sets and be used as blockers, which is good. The offensive line, they're losing 3 starters, Zeke Correll, Timothy McKay, and Anthony Belton. They do return their left side, and I say that with, they actually return their right tackle, Jacarius Peak, but he's moving to left tackle this year. Peak played 842 snaps last year. He is now started for 2 seasons. He was the best offensive lineman on the team, an elite run blocker, only allowed 18 pressures. Now you're kicking him over to left tackle, but he is a good place to start as long as he can transition to the blind side. Left guard is Anthony Carter Jr. He's also started for 2 years. Last year, he allowed just 12 QB pressures, no sacks for him. Good run blocker as well. This left side is locked down. The questions start when you move to center and through the right side. They had Jalen Grant from Purdue. He's been all over the place. Been in college for 5 years, started 2 years with Bowling Green, moves over to Purdue, starts for them last year, gets benched last year. But Jalen Grant has 2,754 snaps. He's played basically every single offensive line position. He has mostly been an interior player, but he does have 860 snaps at center. He's been playing center in camp. He allowed 18 pressures in his last season starting in 2023. Good run blocker. Basically, all of his metrics are average, and it's nice to see that remain consistent, jumping from the MAC to the Big Ten, moving over to the ACC. I think at worst, you're getting an experienced average center. Right guard, this position's up for grabs. There's a couple options. Val Erickson could move from tackle down into the guard position. He's played everywhere in the offensive line except center. He did start at right tackle in the bowl game, but I think he profiles a little bit better as a guard. He was below average overall, but on a small sample. So could we see growth from Val Erickson? He is the most experienced among these players. Other candidates are 3 stars, Trent Mitchell and Kamen Smith. Mitchell only played 3 snaps, but he was a freshman. Smith actually started the bowl game at right guard with Val Erickson playing right tackle. So I think he's probably another candidate you could look at, but we'll see. Ideally, this is probably Smith or Erickson. We shall see how this plays out in the summer. And I say Erickson is a candidate for right guard because they go out and they added Teague Anderson from Utah State at right tackle. And he should play here. He should start. He started the last 2 years in the Mountain West. He was elite in bowl seasons, both of them shortened. So last year, only 8 pressures, elite pass blocker, pretty good in the run game. Teague Anderson should be just fine. For depth outside of the players we mentioned, they do have a 4-star freshman in Takayan Whitsett. They also added Brock Stukes from NC State, and 4-star freshman Spike Souls is with the team. So this is a little bit of a deeper offensive line than we've seen, but this position is generally a strength. They've been good at developing this position. I think it might take a slight step back, but this was a top 25 unit. A slight step back could still leave you like 30th overall and a very good unit overall. Like this offensive line for NC State yet again. Defense. Off the edge, they are losing some production. Davin Vann was a stud for this team. He had 8 sacks and 26 QB pressures. First of all, I should say with new defensive coordinator DJ Elliott, last year NC State was running a 3-3-5, generally playing with 3 down linemen. I think it's going to be similar. DJ Elliott historically runs a 3-4, but your 3-4 scheme generally is morphed depending on what you're seeing, what coverage, down and distance. Generally, one of those backers will either drop in coverage, play the slot, or one will blitz. So this shouldn't be too much of a transition. I'm expecting them to play with 3 linemen again on defense. And that starts with the edge position. They've recruited a lot of bigger edges. Travali Price and Isaiah Shirley fit the bill. Price played 554 snaps last year. He has over 1,200 snaps combined the last 3 years. He's been about average, slightly above average. Last year, just 22 pressures, good run defense numbers, but he's 283 pounds, which makes sense as more of your 3-4 defensive end. We're talking a lot of times lining up on the tackle, being a 5-tech. Shirley's similar. He's 276, 7 pressures for him. Pretty good run defense numbers. They were both good run defenders at this size, just not as developed as pass rushers. They also bring in Sebastian Harsh from Wyoming, Trey Thomas from Temple, Joseph Adedire from Texas Tech, and Cian Sloan from Utah State. Harsh only played in 8 games, but very good pass rush numbers when he did play. He had 20 pressures last year on that limited 8 games, and he was good in run defense. Thomas is a little lighter. He's 228, so maybe you see him play a little more sort of a jack position, a pass rushing linebacker, but he started for Temple the last 2 years, 18 pressures in each, good run defense numbers, jumping competition for a smaller player. Adedire's coming off a missed season last year, but he does have 854 snaps combined in the 2 years prior. Good as a run defender, not the best pass rusher, but we'll see what he gives you. Sloan is also a smaller pass rusher at 235. He has 891 snaps the last 2 years, 34 pressures and 7 sacks. Going to be good as a blitzer. The edge group should be pretty good for this team. They were in the 50s last year, so expecting about the same. Inside, you're looking at Brandon Cleveland. He's back after 588 snaps at 315. Somehow, he was good as a pass rusher. 19 pressures from the interior, playing basically just the nose tackle alignment, lining up straight up over the center. Also good against the run. They're not going to play a lot of other defensive tackles as long as Cleveland stays healthy, but Chaz Wallace is back. He has 996 snaps to his name. Didn't play a lot last year, but he played in rotation with Colorado and Old Dominion, so he's at least experienced. Justin Terrell has 25 snaps. So this unit's not bad. I actually kind of like the defensive line, even with the losses like Davin Vann, who is an absolute stud. Linebacker, Devon Betty's gone. Kamal Bonner's gone. They were 2 of the weaker players on the defense. So this might be an addition by subtraction situation. They do get back Sean Brown. He's a 2-year starter. 1,474 snaps, led the team in tackles with 96, had 22 QB pressures, 9 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks. This was a pretty good player, and his numbers would be higher if you're wondering why the value score is not so high. He missed 17 tackles, and he did allow an 84% completion percentage. That dragged them down to around an average player. But if you get him blitzing, you get him playing in the box, he's an awesome player. Now you just hope the coverage gets a little better and we can clean up some of the missed tackles. They also get back Caden Fordham, injured in week 6, only got off 321 snaps, but he had 48 tackles and 10 pressures before the injury. He also played 411 snaps in 2023, so he has a fair amount of experience, a little better in coverage too. That gives you 2 linebackers. For your third, looking at some combination of Kenny Soares, the Northwestern transfer, AJ Richardson from Norfolk State, Bailey Benson from Wake Forest, or Sterling Dixon from Alabama. Soares is the most experienced, at least among a good level of competition. He played 568 snaps with Northwestern, started a pair of games last year, and he was pretty good in his limited role. Dixon is the most experienced overall, starting for 2 years with Norfolk State, but that was at the FCS level. He was very good in run defense primarily. Dixon's a 4-star redshirt freshman from Alabama, so he should get a chance. Alabama transfers just don't end up at NC State that often. So, just a talented 4-star player. He's going to have opportunities. And then Benson, he's the Wake Forest player. He flipped this spring. Freshman 3-star, spent the spring with Wake Forest, now moves over to NC State. So your linebacker core, I think, should be better. You're just more talented. You have more depth. And as long as we're not injured like last year losing Fordham, this should be a pretty good unit. Secondary, they lose almost everything. Their best player, Bishop Fitzgerald, is gone. Basically, you're returning one starter, and that's Devon Marshall. He played 543 snaps. He's a former Villanova transfer. Last year with NC State, a 52% completion percentage, 297 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 8 PBUs. He was also an above-average run defender, so he's giving you a lot as a boundary corner. The other corner position, I think, is going to be a transfer. You bring in North Texas transfer Brian Nelson II, Temple transfer Jamel Johnson, and Missouri transfer Jaron Sensabaugh from Missouri again. Sensabaugh probably figures to be the least impactful. He only played 6 snaps as a freshman last year, still a very young player. But Nelson and Johnson are very experienced. Nelson played 675 snaps for North Texas last year. He was great in run defense, a 55% completion percentage for 375 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 4 PBUs. That's awesome. Just need to move that up to the ACC. Johnson, he originally played with Charleston Southern, moves over to Temple, another player with strong starting experience at a lower level of competition. He allowed a 36% completion percentage for 242 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 7 PBUs while playing the boundary. Hopefully one of them can just win one of these corner spots, because safety, I think, is probably going to be a position where you're still playing 3, you're kicking 1 in the slot. I don't think you just have a designated slot corner the way this defense profiles to play. If you do, maybe you're looking at a Jackson Vick. He played 139 snaps last year, most of that coming in NC State's final 2 games. But to get to the safety position, because NC State likes to play 3 and move them around, the most experienced is Rente Hinton, and he only has 148 snaps. They were pretty good snaps, but you're still dealing with little experience. Fortunately, this has been a position of strength in terms of recruiting. They have former 4-stars Ronnie Royal III, Zach Myers, and Damon Fagan all on the team. Myers is the only one that played last year, and he only got 10 snaps, but still, that's 3 4-stars who are still on the team that all were recruited to play safety. One of these guys, I hope 2, maybe all 3 can play right away for this team. Otherwise, you're looking at Isaiah Crowell. He played 75 average snaps last year. They bring in J.J. Johnson from Georgia State, who was awesome in the Sun Belt. He led the team in tackles last year, 76% completion percentage for 283 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 5 PBUs. The secondary was the best unit on the defense last year, not by a ton. I think it could be the worst this year, also not by a ton. And I say that with the caveat, they have the ceiling to be very good if the 4-star development actually hits this year under their new DC. We shall see. Overall, I'm liking NC State's roster a little bit more than the public, but it's going to come down to schedule. Before we move on, they also return their kicker. Kanoa Vinicius is back for his 2nd year. Went 34 of 35 in extra points, 18 of 24 on field goals. All the misses came beyond 30 yards, 4 of them beyond 40, and he was 1 of 2 on 50-plus yarders. So there's a lot of potential for him. He was the 64th most efficient kicker last year. NC State wasn't the best special teams team, but they do have the ability to improve. And like we mentioned with NC State and every team for that matter, this is going to come down to scheduling. I like the roster, but who do they play? Here, I always do that. Here is the schedule we have for this upcoming season for NC State. You get a weird game against East Carolina right away in non-con, what is supposed to be a rivalry. That's also on a Thursday, followed up by Virginia, should be an easier game. Then you travel to Wake Forest in week 3, which is also on a Thursday. They have 3 weekday games this year. Florida State at the end of the year is also on a Friday. But overall, all weird weekday spots out of the picture. This is a relatively difficult non-con. You're playing Notre Dame. You're going to be a double-digit underdog. And then from there, East Carolina is not an easy game either. You'd rather play a cupcake team like Temple or something, but you get East Carolina, who's a pretty good team in the AC. Likely 2-1, but I don't think a 1-2 start is crazy. In conference, they face Miami and Georgia Tech, but fortunately, you're dodging Clemson, SMU, and Louisville from the top of the conference. You do play some middle-class teams like Virginia Tech, Duke, Pittsburgh, Florida State, and North Carolina. But you also have some easier games against Virginia and that Wake Forest team. Those teams, even Wake Forest on a short week on the road, that's probably the trickiest spot as far as conference spots go overall. But yeah, this team is going to be a little better than some of those middle-class teams as long as you take care of business against East Carolina and Virginia and Wake Forest. You're off to a 3-0 start. Then you have to go to Duke, Campbell's an FCS team. There's a chance they could be 5-1 heading into the Notre Dame game. I'm not sure that's the most likely, but it's at least possible for NC State. There is a fair amount of change, so we will see what they do with that. But overall, I think this team should be making a bowl with a ceiling for maybe 7 or 8 wins. But I would say bowl, that's probably the minimum this team. You're looking at an expectation of 6.5, 7 wins. But thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think of the video and who you want to see next. I believe Duke will be our next team. But until then, good luck. We will see you guys next time.